Well, hello, District 7 and fellow Toastmasters, and welcome to the first episode of the District 7 podcast. I'm Fred Bergeron, the District 7 Club Growth Director, and tonight you're in for a treat. But before I introduce our guest, I want to ask you all a question, and that is, have you ever lost your funny and were unable to find it? Well, our guest tonight is going to help remedy that issue, plus give us some pointers on how this particular club came to be and how it was a particular club. So please help me welcome my friend from District 84, Distinguished Toastmaster, Marjane Taylor. Welcome, Marjane.
Thanks, Fred.
So, Marjane, are you ready for your off-the-wall question before we go into the interview?
Okay.
What is your favorite quote and why?
Oh, I have a lot of quotes that I like, but one of my very favorites is, "Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. Today is a gift. That's why we call it the present." Now, I'm not sure who said that first. It might have been Eleanor Roosevelt, but the reason I like that is because it reminds me that today is a gift and we only have today. Tomorrow, yesterday's gone. Tomorrow, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if we're going to wake up tomorrow. So live your life in the moment.
And I like how you use the word gift and present in that same quote. I don't know if it was intentional, but I like it, and I like the rhyme as well. So I really like that. So Marjane, I'm going to ask you your first question, and that is, how long have you been in Toastmasters?
I've been Toastmasters for almost 14 years, which seems amazing to me because I never thought that I would be a Toastmaster that long when I first joined.
And in that 14 years you've been a Toastmaster, has there any been a gap in your membership, or have you been going continuously for the whole 14 years?
I have been going continuously for the whole 14 years and may have missed a few meetings, but I don't miss many meetings either. If I am participating in a club, if I'm a member of a club, I'm going to attend as many meetings as I can. And I've also been an officer for almost that whole time. I think I became an officer less than 6 months after I joined Toastmasters.
Yep, I know the feeling, and I can relate to that because when I joined my first club in August of 2014, so you have 4 years on me, is I joined in August, and then January I became Sergeant at Arms of the following year. And it was because when I was going to the meetings, I got there early enough, and I would stumble across a Sergeant at Arms who happened to be setting up. So rather than sit around bored, I asked if I could help. And at the end of the meeting, I would start up a conversation to help them tear down. And when it came right after the holidays, he says, "So, you want to be an officer? You want to be a sergeant at arms?" I said, he goes, "You're already doing it." I'm like, "Well, sure." And that was my start of club leadership, was sergeant at arms. I've held every role in Toastmasters as an officer, but if I was to pick a favorite, Marjane, it would be VPPR first and then president second. Would you have a favorite officer role that you held? And if so, why?
My two favorite officer roles are Sergeant at Arms. And the reason I like Sergeant at Arms, it's not the setting up and the tearing down, but I feel like when the Sergeant at Arms opens the meeting, they set the tone for the meeting. And I like that. And the other role that it's probably my very favorite, is club president. It's people get intimidated and they think, oh, I can't be a club president, but it's actually easier than some of the other roles as long as you've got good officers. It becomes a challenge when you've got newer people and you need to train your officers, but it's just another challenge. So I enjoy club president role the most.
Yeah, and if you look at some of the officer training manual, it tells you you don't have to have any experience to hold any of these roles. Basically, you just have to have a passion for helping your club succeed. And I think the more you do it, just the easier your role will go. And I agree that president is probably one of the easiest, and I'd say probably one of the most challenging would probably be vice president of education, trying to get all those roles filled, or people can show up at the last minute. So
Right.
those are would be my top ones. I would put for my favorite officer roles would be those two, VPPR and president.
Right.
My next question, Marjane, is who or what got you into Toastmasters?
I started Toastmasters when my longtime boss retired. And I had worked for him for over 12 years. He had been really good to me. He had given me promotions and raises, and I planned two huge retirement parties for him. I planned one at a state park for outside consultants, and I work for the state of Florida. And I planned another one in the office for employees that had worked with him. And the one in the office, I asked people to get up and give testimonials. And I kept thinking, I should say something. I should say something. I should say something. And I could not make myself get out there in front of all these people that I work with and say anything, really. I mean, I could do all the behind the scenes stuff, but I did not want to get out there in front and talk to people. And as it happened, about a month later, I got an email at work from a Toastmasters group that met at work for an open house, and it had free pizza. Who can resist? So I talked to one of my coworkers. She might have even mentioned it to me, but she was going to grad school and she needed to learn to do better presentations. And for me, I just never wanted to be put in that position again, where if I worked with somebody that was that good to me that I could not get up and say something. So we both went to the open house. We both joined. We were both members for probably 4 or 5 years, and she finally got promotions and got busy enough that she dropped out. But I am still here, just enjoying it.
Yeah, I hear you. And what got me interested, I was working at one of the local chambers of commerce, and my boss at the time was in Toastmasters, and she was just asking me questions about, like my future and all that. And I said, well, I'd like to be a homeless advocate because I said I used to be homeless and I'd like to help people and tell my story. She goes, well, have you ever heard of Toastmasters? I said, I have, but I said I said every place I've worked, I never had the opportunity to speak in front of people. She said, well, if you're going to be an advocate, you need to join Toastmasters. And 5 minutes later, I left her office and went into mine, and I'm looking up the Toastmasters Club, and she stuck her head around the corner and realized I wasn't doing the work she assigned me to do. But then when she saw I was looking up Toastmasters, she smiled and said, oh, what club did you find? And I told her, I said, I found a couple. And then August 1st, I became a member of a club called Orman Speech Masters, who's still doing pretty good. And I did something a little different, Marjane, is I competed in a contest before I did my icebreaker. I was 2 weeks into Toastmasters, and as we're putting the contest together, my mentors asked me if I wanted to be a sergeant at arms or a contestant. And I said, well, I just joined. I said, what's the criteria for being a contestant? And she said, a member of good standing. And she said, last I checked, you're a member in good standing. So I like to call that, I've given a speech about it afterwards. I called it the speech before the speech. So I did things a little differently. I did my humorous speech contest before I did my icebreaker. So that's kind of a story I have to tell a lot of people there, is how I got into Toastmasters.
Right. When I first started, I didn't realize it at the time, but there was really only probably one or maybe two or three, but I think only one really experienced members, and most of the other members joined shortly before I did, and then some joined after. But I thought they were all very experienced. I didn't know until quite a bit later they weren't. We had probably few months after I started, it was contest season, and this more experienced person said, "Hey, why don't you compete in table topics contest?" Well, up to that point, I hadn't spoken very much in the club. I'm not even sure if I had given my icebreaker because I was so nervous and shy about it. But I had done table topics, and I never was voted like for the most favorite table topic speaker. There were two guys who it was always between the two of them. They were funny. They came up with witty answers right off the bat. And he kind of convinced me, it's just a club meeting. It's just a club meeting, just like any other club meeting, just do table topics. I said, okay, I can do that. Well, the thing was, the question that we got wasn't anything that lent itself to humor. And I ended up winning it. So I ended up going to the area contest, and I was so nervous. I spent, I don't know how much time after that reading every table topics question I could find, asking people to quiz me with table topics questions. I would walk down the hallway and I would think, okay, if I'm speaking to a person, I'm going to act like it's a table topic and I'm going to answer them as if I was answering table topics. So it did get me to practice table topics a lot.
Yeah, unbeknownst to you. And did you know that table topics was the only club contest I've ever won? Was table
Ah,
topics. That's out of all the ones I've competed, that was the only one. Now, granted, when I was in the humorous speech contest, people were laughing, but I was brand new and I was reading notes. So I think if I didn't have notes, I probably could have placed, but I was
right.
still within time. And the fact that people were laughing and I was a brand new Toastmaster made
Yeah.
me feel really good. Which brings me to my next question, Marjane, is most people usually ask the question, why did you join Toastmasters? But I'm going to change it up a little bit and ask, why do you stay in Toastmasters?
I stay for a few reasons. Number one, I feel like I'm still learning and still growing, and I love that. Number two, I love the people that I've met along the way. People in Toastmasters are almost always very positive and supportive, and I like that. And then, kind of going back a little bit to the learning thing, I realized that lifelong learning is a really good way to keep your brain active. And my mother had dementia, so that's important to me to keep my brain active. And it's not just keeping the brain active with learning how to speak and learning how to be a better leader, but it's keeping your brain active with the conversations you have. So there's a social aspect, but also with the subjects that other Toastmasters speak about. I've heard about so many subjects and people that I never would have heard of otherwise. So those are the things that keep me interested in Toastmasters.
I hear you. And I have a friend in another district. She's a widow and lost her husband like about a year and a half ago. And she's probably in her 70s. And she said one of the biggest reasons why she stays is she said it's because it keeps her, not just keeps her active, but it keeps her brain active and it kind of keeps her on her toes. So
Right.
she said that's one of the biggest reasons why she stayed. But one of the biggest reason why I've stayed is because when I first joined Toastmasters, I knew nothing about district leadership, and an opportunity came by for an area director. And I remembered we were at my very first conference, and our area director and I were waiting for my mentor, the one who convinced me to compete in the contest. And as we're waiting, he said, how would you like to be an area director? He said, we have an opening. And I said, could you wait a second while I pick my jaw from the floor? I said, because I don't think I heard you correctly. I said, you actually want me to be an area director? He said, yes. He said, we have an opening. Our previous area director dropped out, and I feel you'd be a good fit. And from that point forward, I met other people along my Toastmasters journey, and they found out I was homeless. But the biggest thing they noticed about it, Marjane, was because I used to be homeless, I had very low self-esteem. So there were a lot of people who boosted my self-confidence back up, saying, you know, you can do this. Don't worry about failing because that's part of learning. And
Right.
so many people helped me get my self-confidence back up, Marjane, whether I was going to be an area director or not. Just knowing I had all this love and support for people that
Right.
saw something in me that I didn't, because my self-esteem was so low. And that was the biggest reason why I stayed. And unbeknownst to me, I became area director of the year for 2016, 2017. And
Wow.
I wasn't in it for the accolades. I was just doing it because I wanted to learn the role. And the fact that people saw something in me that I didn't, as far as leadership, really flattered me. And that was
Right.
the biggest reason why I stayed. And now I'm the club growth director for
Yeah.
District 7. And
That's
it
awesome.
I owe a lot of it to those people who gave me that extra push and said, you can, you know, you can do this, Fred, we believe in you. And it was just listening to all those people and saying that they believe in you that made me motivated to stay. And then it later, like I said, it raised my confidence level to a whole new level
I think
because
that's
of people like that.
one of the big benefits of Toastmasters that I don't know if it gets talked about enough, but I think that whether you become a better speaker or a better leader is one thing, but just the confidence boost. Almost everybody that I've met that has stayed in Toastmasters for any length of time becomes more confident. You know, some people have more confidence coming in than other people, but it doesn't seem to matter. They all seem to grow in confidence if they stay around a little while.
Oh, yes, for sure. So now, Marjane, I'm going to ask you about this club that you chartered in District 84. It was a virtual club that you chartered in District 84. So could you please tell us the name of that club and how it came to be?
It is Find Your Funny Toastmasters. Uh, I love Find Your Funny Toastmasters. It really started out as something that one of my friends and mentors, who's a Toastmaster, was asking me, what what did I plan to do with what I've learned in Toastmasters to take it outside of Toastmasters? Because as much as I love Toastmasters, the goal for most people is not to become the best Toastmaster in the world. It's to become a better speaker, a better leader, so they can take it out into the rest of the world and use those talents. And I honestly, I still don't know exactly how I'm going to use this, but one of the things that came to mind was something that I think came from Darren LaCroix or maybe some of the other professional speakers that I've heard. But I've heard them say that, you know, if you want to get hired as a speaker, you need to learn the craft and become a good speaker. But if you want to be rehired by a company or as a speaker, you need to be able to add humor. And so I thought, okay, I don't know what I want to do yet, but why don't I work on how to add humor? Because that way, if I ever do decide to go out and become a professional speaker or even a speaker for, you know, an advocate for a group or an organization, I'll be able to be asked back again if I can add that humor piece. So I started looking at clubs. I started visiting other humor clubs. Some I liked, some I didn't, but I found one that I really liked a lot, which is called Laugh Lovers. It's out in California, and I loved it. But the problem that I found was that it met on Sunday night, which would be okay, except that with the 3 hour time difference, it meant that it would be really too late for me on a Sunday night when I have to work Monday morning. And I was so disappointed, and I kind of stewed about this and stewed about it. And then I had this sort of epiphany, like, duh, District 84 does not have any club like this. Why don't we? Why don't we have a club like this? And at the time, I was the district administration manager, so I was attending all of the DEC meetings, the District Executive Council meetings with the leadership. And of course, as an area director or area governor, which is what I was, but that they're always trying to add clubs. And so I thought, well, I'll just bring it up at the end of one of these meetings when they're talking about, who wants to start a club. And maybe one of these area directors will start the humor club in our district. Well, I brought it up. It didn't go exactly like planned because our district director at the time, Pim Parpart, pretty much just threw it right back at me to get the club started. And she did help, and so did the rest of the trio. In fact, they all joined as members, which was something that I thought was great to have the whole trio in our club as members. Pim actually sent out a Facebook post asking people if we were to start a club for humor in District 84, what would you call it? And so we had all these people responding back with names, which we kept track of and we voted on later. But we also kept those names as contacts when we were getting ready to do our demonstration meeting, and we invited all of them to come. So that helped to get it started.
Yeah, and I remembered when Pim invited me, I had showed him and I got hooked the first night, and it ended up being a member because you remember I used to be part of your club. And if I can confess something, Marjane, I liked your club so much. I mean, unfortunately, I had to leave because I became the District 7 Public Relations Manager and now the Club Growth Director. But the club I started here in District 7, Podmasters, I actually borrowed a lot of the structure from Find Your Funny. And because you had those unusual role names, I actually applied that. Like our Toastmaster is a hostmaster, our speakers are our podcasters, our evaluators are producers, our timer is a clock watcher, and our general evaluator is the executive producer, and our audience members are the cast and crew.
Right.
So I
Right.
borrowed a lot of your structure and a lot of your unique role names and applied it to Podmasters because I liked your club that much. I just wish I could have stuck around because now Podmasters also meets on Sundays as well. And we meet every Sunday, which is what the club decided to do when we were meeting every first and third. They decided to do it every Sunday. But I owe a lot of that to Find Your Funny because I just, like I said, I loved your structure. I learned a lot the whole year and a half I was there, and you were a big part of why I stayed in that club for so long because you guys have what's called a humor buddy program. You helped me with one of my speeches on our humor buddy Zoom call. I was throwing ideas at you, so well, why don't you do this? And it went over pretty good. And then I did another one where I did a humorous presentation where other people helped me, and I've used it a couple of times since then, and people liked it. So I learned a lot about being funny from that club. And just unfortunately I couldn't stay. But that brings me to my next question, Marjane, and that is how many members do you currently have in the club and what have you done to maintain membership?
Okay, well, we chartered with 27 members and we chartered pretty quickly. I think we currently have 25 members. I'd have to look that up for sure, but it's 24, 25. I think part of the secret, it's not really a secret, but part of it is that we are a specialty club and we know exactly what we're focusing on. We specialize in helping members learn how to uncover the humor in the speeches that they're giving anyway. We decided early on that we did not want to cater to comedians. We weren't a club that was trying to produce stand-up comics. We wanted to elevate speeches with humor that's uplifting and not comedy that I think of as maybe degrades people a little bit or puts them down a little bit. So we always wanted to lift people up and just add to the speeches we're giving anyway. How do we let's see, how do we maintain membership? I think there's a lot that goes into that. One of the things we do, we try to post regularly on Facebook. Our members, we try to make sure that our meetings are fun so that our members want to bring guests, and that helps a lot.
Yes, in my home club in Florida, that's how we got a lot of our new members was the consistent posting of photos. We would actually post twice, especially when I was VPPRs. We post like a flyer with the meeting information, like where we meet, when we meet, and that we meet hybrid in person and on Zoom. And then we would also post photos and videos from our meeting. So we were posting twice a week. And even though I'm not VPPR anymore, our current VPPR followed a little bit of my footsteps by keeping the website current and consistently posting on Facebook. Marjane, I kid you not, we get at least 2 inquiries per week from TI from Find a Club saying we have a prospective member who's interested in your club. And it's because we've kept our website up to date, which I did during the transition with our current VPPR, showed him how to update free toast hosts and told him the importance of keeping it current. And he hasn't done much since then because I did a lot of the legwork.
Yeah.
But it's been consistent from that point forward. Like, he knows how to add members and all. So I do think that's a lot of it. And to your point about having fun, I have a saying in Toastmasters that other people have borrowed, and that is, if you're not having fun in Toastmasters, you're not doing it right.
Right. I love it.
Yeah. And when I joined Orman Speechmasters, something they tacked on to the end of their club mission statement was, and have fun doing it. So ever since that stuck in my mind, I've remembered that because I remembered one of our new members, when she talked to me on the phone before she joined our meeting, she was freaking out, asking me all these questions. She said, well, what should I expect? What's your structure like? And she was asking me like 10,000 questions, almost to the point of hyperventilating. And I said, why don't you just come to the meeting, bring your friend, because she said she was bringing a friend, just observe and have fun. And the following meeting, she pulled me aside and she said, I remember you telling me to not worry about anything when I came to the meeting and to just have fun. And she said, you are so correct. She said, that's why my friend and I here joined, because we had fun when we attended. I mean, naturally, they got comfortable enough where they were in table topics. None of them have given any speeches yet, but they got comfortable enough to hold roles, participate in table topics, things like that. And they were coming on a regular basis. And it was all because I told them, just have fun. Don't sweat it, don't study it, just observe and have fun. And that's what sold them in being a member of our club, was because I told them, just have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important. One of the things I've listened to is it was a CD. I think you can find it online now. If you Google it, you could probably find it. But Lance Miller is one of our former world champions of public speaking. And Lance Miller and a lady named Roberta Perry put this CD out called Building a Championship Club. And they talk about taking a club from 3 or 4 members up to something like 90 some members and how they did it. And one of the things that Lance said was that they surveyed members, they surveyed people, I think, who used to be members, and asked, why did you stay in the club, or what keeps you in the club? And it was, I think number 3 was learning to be a better speaker, and number 2 was something else, but number 1 was having fun. And so my thought is, if you're having meetings and they're not fun, if your members are not having fun, you're not going to keep your members. So that's one way to maintain membership, is to make sure your meetings are fun.
Oh, I agree 100%. So that brings me to my next question, Marjane, and that is, why do you think clubs struggle to overcome attrition?
Okay, well, I think there are a lot of reasons that they can, but one of the big reasons that I see is that meetings are not always well organized. And when I say that a meeting should be fun, I think it's hard for a meeting to feel like fun if you're in the meeting and trying to set the roles or figure out who's speaking and who's going to be the Toastmaster and who's going to be the timer. If that's all done ahead of time, you can relax and just have fun in the meeting. So that's been, kind of one of my driving forces for Find Your Funny, and now I'm doing it with my home club too, is to make sure that those meeting roles are filled before the meeting. And in the case of Find Your Funny, we meet the second and fourth Sundays each month. I'm the BPE this year, so if the roles are not filled by Friday night or Friday afternoon, I'm usually, and Fred, you probably received some texts or phone calls, maybe an email, but usually it's a text or a phone call at that point, because I figure I've already sent emails to get the roles filled ahead of time. And there's still going to be, somebody who calls at the last minute, they got sick or something happened. But for the most part, we get them filled ahead of time. And even for those last minute things, if people are on 10 minutes early, we'll try to get it filled in that 10 minutes. If it's not crucial, we may just skip it all together, but we try to get it all set ahead of time so we can just relax and have fun. And having fun doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a clown or funny or anything like that. It just means, just keeping it light and keeping it interesting and keeping the meeting flowing.
Yes, and I like that concept, Marjane, because I think with all that in place, I think the structure will happen. I think as long as you
Right.
have fun and the consistency, but I think the structure will fall into place. Then it's all about having fun from there. So I agree with the fun concept and the structure being in place for sure to overcome the attrition, because attrition happens. You just have to get back on your feet, or as some people like to say,
Right.
back up and punt. Sometimes is what you have to do. But like you said, having fun the whole time while you're doing it plays a big factor. Because if you're not having fun, like I said, you're not doing it right. It's
Right. And I think part of that too is Find Your Funny, I found had because it's an advanced club, it's an advanced specialty club. All of our members were already Toastmasters, so they already knew how to do a lot of the things. But we got some great officers. We still have great officers, but I was blown away that first year by how dedicated and good the officers were. And I think that helps a lot. So for clubs that are just starting, or clubs that are community clubs that, maybe they don't have experienced officers, maybe you've got, like Fred, who came in as a new member and became the sergeant at arms. Training those officers is really important, and having monthly officer meetings, I think, is crucial, because that's where you get all the planning done ahead of time so you can have fun meetings.
for sure. On that note too, Marjane, is you know, what words of wisdom would you give to those wanting to charter a club and to maintain a healthy club?
So to charter a club, wow, what worked for me was just to get other people to help me charter the club. And it takes a team, but I think I mentioned I was the district administration manager back then, and I had the help of the trio. But I also would suggest that you may not always get the help of the trio, but you could probably get your area director, your division director. You can get people, if it's a club that meets at work, get some of your coworkers together and get them interested. If it's a specialty club, like podcasters, find out, who wants to know more about podcasting. Or with us, it was humor, find out, who is it that wants to learn how to add humor and get them involved. Um, Now, to maintain a healthy club, wow, that's a little harder, and it it still involves a lot, but basically I think it comes down to two things: provide value for your members so they feel like they're spending their time and their money wisely and have fun, because they're not going to come if they're not having fun. So one of the things that Find Your Funny does to provide value, we bring in a guest educational headliner once a month for 15 minutes to teach us how to uncover the humor in the speeches that we're giving. And then once a month, because we meet twice a month, so the other meeting, we have one of our members fill that role, which helps them learn how to give a little bit longer presentation and to train other people how to add humor or uncover humor, however you want to put that. But you may, like, as an educational headliner, it might not be something that comes naturally to you. You might have to research it and then give your presentation. But provide a well-organized meeting. We talked about that earlier. What is it that's going to make your club stand out and be different? For us, it's humor. For my club at work, we try to focus on leadership. The name of the club is Leadership Toastmasters. One of the club programs that I think really helped Find Your Funny, you mentioned earlier, and that's our Humor Buddy program. And I've also carried that over to my other club as a coaching buddy program. But for Humor Buddies, we pair each other, we pair the members up for 2 months at a time to help each other, whether that's to help with a speech or a leadership project, a pathways project, or maybe just to discuss what they learned from the educational headliner and how they can use that. And I think it works really well, because if you get a great humor buddy, you can always ask for that humor buddy again or just stay in contact with them. And if you get somebody who, frankly, maybe they're too busy right then and it's kind of a dud and it doesn't work out that great, you've only got 2 months to wait till you can, connect with someone new, or you can reconnect with somebody that you've been a humor buddy with before. But it works pretty well. And I think that helps to, keep members interested and build those relationships. Now, one of the pieces of advice that I got when I was an area governor, back when they were governors and not directors, came from my district director at the time, who was Mary Carol Holbert. I don't know if you remember Mary Carol, but I was struggling as an area governor, and I think this works for clubs too. And I said, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can keep going. I don't know what to do. And she said, just love your club. And honestly, that works for the club too. If you're a member, if you're an officer, think about your other members and what can you do to help them. Just love your club. And I love my clubs. I do love my clubs. So I think that's another way to, help maintain a healthy club. And then going back one more time to Lance Miller and his Building a Championship Club program. If you get a chance, Google it. I think you can find it out there now. It's about an hour and he's got some great tips, but he talks about Kentucky Fried Chicken and Colonel Sanders' special or secret recipe. And what Lance said was, there is no secret. The secret is doing the ordinary things, but doing them extraordinarily well. So being prepared for all the roles, having the roles filled ahead of meetings, staying on time with your meetings, all those little things add up. And I think that helps you to have a better club and helps you to maintain your members.
Yes, I like that. And back to the Humor Buddy program is, like I said, I borrowed a lot of stuff that Find Your Funny did for Podmasters, and the Humor Buddy program is something we're going to implement, except we're going to call it like a mentoring program, or podcast pals is kind of what we're going to dub it. Kind of the same concept, as we're going to talk to people that, who want to do a podcast but maybe, are on the fence about it. And we can sit down with them and say, is there any type of theme you're wanting to do? Any particular type of podcast you're wanting to do? What style of podcast were you wanting to do? And we can go over that with them. We can look in pathways and see, where they want to do that. When that comes into place, we don't know if we're going to do it every 2 months, but we did want to implement that as part of our mentoring program,
Right.
because podcasting, just like Find Your Funny, it's a unique niche in and of it, especially for Toastmasters Club. So we
Right.
have to be unique in kind of how we structure well, and that's your structure worked for Find Your Funny. I figured, why not carry it over to the
Right. Which
Podmasters?
which brings me to another District 84 program that we haven't really talked about, which is the Club Ambassador program. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a program, but go and visit other Toastmasters clubs. I know you've done that, and you learn a lot by visiting other clubs, because we go and we try to steal or borrow the best ideas from other clubs and bring them back to our club. And we encourage people to come to Find Your Funny, see what we're doing. If there's something you like the humor buddy, or the roles that have different names, or we've got a unique role in Humor Buddy, in Find Your Funny, I mean, called the Humor Detector role. And you're familiar with that, but it's basically, I think some clubs might call it a listening role, where you're listening for humor, or listening for missed opportunities for humor. But go to those other clubs and borrow some ideas from them.
Well, and that's one thing I put on my list as club growth director, is to visit both strong clubs and weak clubs, and kind of feel it out. Like the strong club, like my next guest after you, he's part of a club in District 7. They've been President's Distinguished 19 years
Wow.
consecutively.
Wow.
Consecutively. So I'm going to be interviewing him and basically asking him, what's the secret to your success, which he's willing to sell. I visited a club in District 7 earlier. It's a virtual only club. They're a very successful club. And I was asking them things like, what are some things you're doing to be successful? I'm not going to go into all the details, but one of the members who was there for a while was telling me things like, have a couple of what's he called champions in your club, people who can help motivate other people to get your
Ah,
club successful. And that was one of them. And it's like you, she was very consistent in reaching out to people, past members, and recruiting people. So she was very consistent with that as well. And something I found out with chartering clubs as well is a saying I learned in management training, and that's to have the aces in their places. And that's for both chartering and maintaining a healthy club. So if you're chartering and you have a deadline set, you want those motivated people, what I call action takers, not action talkers, to help you meet that deadline. But I think it will also help with a healthy club as well, is if you have the aces in their places, rather than having a lot of people who want to do it but maybe are still kind of wet behind the ears with chartering a club or knowing what it takes to maintain a healthy club. I mean, mix it up, but you still want to have the aces in their places, I think, for all that to
so
happen.
you want motivators.
Correct. Because then those motivators can motivate other people as
Correct.
well, versus the Debbie Downers who you pretty much want to stay away from.
Yeah.
Right. So we're going to wrap it up here, Marjane, and that is, how would people get a hold of you who might be interested in finding their funny?
Okay. Well, you probably the easiest and best way is to go to findyourfunny.toastmastersclubs.org, our club website. You will see above, there's a picture there, and above that, there's the Find Your Funny TM interest form. If you click on that, it will give you the link and you'll be able to come and visit the club. We'd love to have you come and visit and maybe become a member, but at least come and visit. See if it's for you.
Right. You know, when you touched up on something earlier about visit other clubs and brag about your club, that's how I got quite a few people in Podmasters, and that's how I'm sure you got people in Find Your
Right.
Funny as well. Is, you know, just if you're passionate about it, talk about it.
Yes. Yes.
Exactly.
And go outside of your club to some of the division and district events so that you get to know people. And of course, now online you can get to know them that way too. But the more people you know, the more the more you've got to draw from that might be interested in whatever your kind of club is.
Yes, I do agree, Marjane. Well, let me say thank you very much for being my very first podcast guest on the District 7 podcast. It's always good reaching out to people I know inside and outside, you know, the districts I live and play with. So thank you very much again for gracing us with your presence and telling us
Well,
how to find our funny, but at the same time, be successful and have fun. So I'm Fred Bergeron signing off. Thank you again, Marjane, and I'll see you on the rebound.